Jesus, MGTOW? The 5 MGTOW moments of Jesus. It might be possible for me to produce a lengthy film in response to this excellent question, but I'll try to keep it brief. I'll say it again, I'm not here to convert. The Bible has a lot to say about MGTOW, women, and most importantly for us, what it means for a guy to live a fulfilling life, whether you believe it to be the truth or simply another work of fiction. I'm not going to declare in this video if Jesus was in MGTOW or not. I know it's sort of silly of you to ask, but today we're going to look at 5 instances when Jesus was either MGTOW or advocated MGTOW doctrine to others. 1. His life and ministry. Jesus would be included on a Mount Rushmore of independent-minded individuals. On the MGTOW Mount Rushmore, I would put figures like Gandhi, Siddhartha Gautama, William Wallace, and perhaps Nikola Tesla. Post your historical MGTOW in the comments area to inspire more MGTOWs in history movies. Jesus had to teach against the powerful, Pharisaical culture of the day and claimed that he was the Son of God, which is a claim that, at that time and in Jewish culture, might lead to death. He would associate with prostitutes, tax collectors, Samaritan women, and the lowest members of society without worrying about the repercussions. He didn't take anything for himself, and after working as a carpenter for what is said to be the first 30 years of his life, he spent 3 years traveling without a house and preaching in what Sandman would refer to as TMO, or traveling my way. While those who believe in extra-canonical passages may disagree, he never married and never had sexual relations with a woman, yet he is regarded as a man's man that hundreds of millions of people have chosen to emulate in some way. He carried no extra provisions with him and completely left his home and family in Nazareth. Many guys today believe that having sexual affairs demonstrates our manliness. But where did this paradigm change originate if a man that hundreds of millions choose to imitate never engaged in sexual relations? A lady may be slept with by anyone. Any bum can get a woman. When the broad is ready to have an orgasm, he temporarily loses sight of the fact that he is a bum, pun intended. Genghis Khan style plundering and raping is not a trait only worthy men should aspire to. Abstinence, self-assurance in one's abilities, and a nomadic existence are all traits of MGTOW conduct. I think that many MGTOW men's lifestyles are heavily influenced by minimalism, nomadic living, and off-the-grid living, and that the idea of turning MGTOW makes home life worse. To survive from meal to meal and from bed to bed, Jesus did not take a home or a wife. His own beliefs, message, and internal principles guided his behavior, and I think that is ultimately what it means to be an actualized MGTOW. 2. Examine the followers. Seen the disciples? Even Mary Magdalene wasn't a follower. The 12 apostles were all male. Were they extraordinary, brilliant men? Not necessarily. Most people agree that 7 out of the 12 disciples were fishermen. They were all guys. Someone ought to consider what could have happened had the disciples been female if we wanted a decent alternate history message. If that were the case, I'd also refer to this as the Bible's equivalent of the women Ghostbusters. Because women were not instructors on that day, it would not have been effective. All of the leaders in politics, religion, and education were men. Going from town to town without provisions is probably something that ladies couldn't handle either. In Matthew 10:5, Jesus commands followers to carry no gold, silver, or copper in your belts, take no bag for the journey, take no additional garment, take no sandals, take no staff, for the worker is worthy of his keep. MGTOW is moved by the last statement, the worker is worth his keep. It's one of the Metro West things you could say. MGTOW is about getting rid of everything that might be a hindrance to self-actualization, including any dependency on anything, even the government, women, and objects. Because of this, the MGTOW philosophy places a strong emphasis on self-education, skill development, and individual accountability. You are only as valuable as what your mind and body can produce, after all. 3. Jesus' advice to avoid marriage, according to eunuchs. In Corinthians 7, Paul claims that he hopes that all men were single and that they did not marry. I wish that all of you were like I am, Paul says in 7:7. However, God has given every one of you a unique gift. Some of you have this gift and others have that. I try not to criticize individuals who have married after this point because it is obvious that this message is not for everyone. But if any of you can receive this message, please do so. The same idea is said by Jesus, but he goes one step further and adds that being a eunuch is much better. Due to a viewer's suggestion, I will talk more about eunuchs in the future. A eunuch is a guy who has undergone castration, particularly one who is hired to watch over the women's living quarters at an Eastern court. Okay, I don't advocate castrating anyone, promise. Don't misunderstand me here. After being questioned by the disciples about adultery, marriage, and divorce, Jesus responded by saying what Paul writes about marriage in Matthew 19:11. When they questioned him about whether it was preferable to avoid getting married, Jesus said, "Not everyone can accept this message, but only those to whom it has been given. Because there are eunuchs who were created that way by others, eunuchs who were born that way, and eunuchs who chose to live that way for the benefit of the heavenly kingdom. Whoever can accept this should do so. There is nothing new under the sun once more. The world has not altered. What makes you believe that getting married is simple and that all men should embrace it if it was claimed that it was best not to marry before the waves of feminism and gynocentric swept over in what is now known as the Eastern world? Men, accept it if you can live with it and never get married. Although society has made us more aware of it, MGTOW is the current incarnation of that order. Because we live in the gynocracy, examples like Tesla's abstention from drugs back then are much more significant and uncommon than they are now. Even though they were acting in a patriarchal society, Paul and Jesus said this. What does that mean, exactly? It also demonstrates how much more a man may do and commit himself to intellectual pursuits, his career, and assisting a huge number of people, which is one of the main motivations for both Paul and Jesus' remarks about not getting married. I'll create a video on this later. You won't be hearing about this for the foreseeable future. 4. Jesus visiting the temple. There is a perception, mostly held by those who denigrate MGTOW, that because MGTOW men are forging their paths and eschewing the roles that contemporary society uses to define the masculinity of males, including occupations, marriages, and even combat, we are not real men. They make fun of us for being timid and frail. Being humble, in my opinion, is a sign of strength. If you check it up, the term praus, pronounced prehooks, which is used to define meekness, is where the word comes from. The word praus, which refers to horse training, was taken from the military. I'll quote from this word study for you. In this context, the word meek was used to characterize a horse that was now prepared to engage in combat. The word meekness originally referred to restrained might. This is how I picture an MGTOW man, humble. He exudes an Obi-Wan calm, inner assurance, and equilibrium. He will submit to the ways of the world, but if it means turning the tables in the temple, a holy site where doing so may result in death by stone, he will do it. He did this in front of everyone present, many of whom would have been higher-ups given that they were selling goods in a location as holy as the temple courts. This is the ideal synthesis of the MGTOW humility I just mentioned. Save that strength and that vitality. In the words of the Age of Empires 2 quotation, discretion is preferable to bravery. Although I dislike listing characteristics that make an MGTOW man, I think we should strive to be a gentle community. The power that is stored and ready to release when necessary. 5. The women at the well and Jesus. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this tale. One of the most often told biblical tales is the subject of a plethora of feminist interpretations today. But in this case, Jesus criticizes a promiscuous woman. I'll provide a summary of the narrative, which is found in John 4. According to other readings, Jesus was essentially setting this lady up by having a sexual encounter with her in a water well, the equivalent of a modern-day bar. Jesus then visits a well in the village of Sychar. In this tale, he was alone, and as ladies in those days did, they were the ones who would go to the well and draw water. They were able to complete the task. She refused to give Jesus any water even though he was a Jew and she was a Samaritan, and they couldn't be friends. She responds that it is inconceivable that he could provide her with this water without any utensil to pail the water when he then talks about the water he possesses that would satisfy her thirst. When she requests the water, he immediately changes the subject and uses one of the most MGTOW verses in the Bible. He instructed her to go, summon her husband, and then return. I don't have a husband, she said. You are correct in your assertion that you have no spouse, Jesus told her. You've had 5 spouses, and your current partner isn't one of them. Your recent statement is entirely accurate. This sentence conveys several ideas. A male who is hitting on a woman is unlikely to bring up this topic, not just because it is something that a typical man wouldn't know about women, but also because it is inappropriate. Since he was the one there at the moment, he would just ignore it and remark, "Who cares about those 5 ex-husbands?" Jesus confronts her in full view. Red pill sincerity and openness. Additionally, this demonstrates that women are still the hypergamous creatures they were 2,000 years ago. There is nothing new under the sun once more. A lady with the wrong intentions cannot be satisfied by one man. Because she was conversing in public with a man like this in the first place, it was evident that she was dissatisfied with her present spouse as well. To communicate with her his message about his impending arrival as the Messiah, Jesus effectively cornered her. Here, There is a directness and harsh honesty that many MGTOW guys would describe as having red pill clarity when they recall times of calling women out. We aim to be able to get at this clarity and disregard the question of whether doing so would be seen to be polite. Forget about it. Life is too short to be concerned with other people's feelings or the feelings the gynocracy wants you to be concerned with. Speak truthfully. Use a bottle of red tablets to attack them. If they spill, make them clean up the mess before you let them eat. There are no 5-second rules. Who cares if they contain a few germs when they are constantly available to be eaten? It will spare you from a life full of possible suffering. A few microorganisms are considerably less harmful.